Excited to
Yeah.
have you with us, Sari. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself? I thought you'd be a perfect speaker because of everything going on right now. And also, we're back to school. It's the start of a new school year. You're
Yeah.
a teacher in New York where we have a new law that students are dealing with where they're not allowed to use their cell phones at all. It's interesting, too, because I think it's kind of a nonpartisan issue in a way. I was doing a panel on ABC the other day, and it's always
Yeah.
two Republicans, two Democrats, and all four of us were like, this sounds like a good idea, and maybe other states should try it. So tell
Yeah.
us about yourself, and then we can just kick off right with
Yeah.
how that experience has been for you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about all these topics today, including the cell phone ban. So, I've been teaching for over 2 decades, and this is obviously my first year, except for maybe the first couple years of teaching, without kids having cell phones, right? And I will say that I was skeptical. I did join a call with Governor Hochul's team a week before school started, and they were just onboarding us with everything and giving us all the information about it. And I was cautiously optimistic because I know how addicted young people are, and myself included.
I know, yeah.
I'm addicted to my phone. And I feel like, especially if, if we're going to talk about the headlines from this week,
Yeah.
I feel addicted to knowing not just like what happened by the end of the day. I want to know minute to minute. So it felt a little scary to me because I knew that if my students were going to have phones, then I also had to model that behavior. So I was like, okay.
Why?
So the cell phone ban also means kind of a cell phone ban for me when I'm in the classroom. And I will say, and I'm not just saying this because I want to make my school look good. Every school was given their own, we were given the guidelines. It's a state law, no phones, figure out how you want to handle it. We
Right.
decided to use the Yonder patches, which I'm sure are making a lot of money these days. Shout out
Yeah.
to
Wait,
Yonder.
can you explain how it works to people? Because I didn't know about it until I just heard
Yeah,
the
it's
story.
it's wild. So basically it's a super magnet. I'm sure the kids are already researching. I heard at Stuyvesant they figured out how to demagnetize. Because
That's why they go to Stuyvesant. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, exactly. Like shout out to Stuyvesant, figure it out. But basically it's a super magnet. And what happens is the students are supposed to they put them in the pouches, and then the administrators lock them up, they magnetize them shut. And then the only way to access your phone is with that super magnet demagnetizer.
Okay.
So basically you have your phone all day in a pouch, and then when you leave school, well, basically you have to have your phone in the pouch from the minute you walk into school, and then 2:40 p.m., the end of the school day, or whatever the end of the school day is.
Hey,
And
Tina.
then hey Tina, and then basically then you go to an administrator and they demagnetize it for you. And then you can have it for clubs and sports. And listen, there were some lines in the morning in the beginning because kids, to make the process efficient, you should have your phone in the pouch before you walk through the doors. But it's working, and the kids, l- I don't want to jinx it, but the kids are talking to each other more. And when there's moments where, like right before the bell rings, normally kids would just we'd all be on our phones.
Right.
We're talking like, hey, tell me what's going on.
Nice.
Like normal behavior.
Wait,
And
okay, explain one thing
yeah,
to me though. What's the pouch thing? Like, why not just lock it in a drawer?
because Wh because uh, because then we have thousands of kids, and that's gonna be
Okay.
crazy, and then it's gonna lead to potential phones getting stolen,
I
right?
see.
Because
Okay.
yeah, it just could lead to more
So they
theft.
keep their phone with them all
They
day.
keep it all
Gotcha.
day,
Yeah. Okay.
and then because
Interesting.
basically it's really hard to manage that. Like, I guess the other way to do it would be kids would come in, they would walk down the hallways, they'd have their phones, then they could put it in, like, pouches in the classroom and then take them out. But I think the concern was that some kids, it's going to become a behavioral issue where all day I'd be policing phones, put it in the
Yeah.
pouch, knowing
Got it.
who's
And I guess
used it.
people switch with the different teachers and everything, so it makes sense they just keep
Yeah,
it with them.
and the kids are upset. I've heard some kids saying that they wish they had it at lunch, but again, it's like, I don't know, talk to
I
people,
I
take
wonder what it
turns.
does for all the drama that goes down at school.
I
Like, if I
know.
remember we had BBM back in my day, we were, like,
Yeah,
all texting each other all the day
AOL
long.
message. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
here's the thing though, right? They are allowed to have laptops, and they can have their personal
Oh,
laptops.
okay. So they can
So,
iMessage.
yeah. They can iMessage. They just can't go on
Okay, I
Instagram
guess
or
still, like,
Snap.
if somebody's on their laptop, so it's a little different.
Yeah, like, I was doing a little mini lecture, and I was like, "You don't need to write any of this down," and a bunch of kids had their laptops open. I was like, "You don't need to have your laptop open," and they're like, "Oh." And in the past, it would be less of they wouldn't listen as much. They'd be like, "Oh, it's" but because devices were just everywhere, and now it's kinda like, "Oh, you're right. Okay, we'll just listen. Cool." So
Interesting.
it's
Do you
working.
think it's
Yeah.
have you seen I mean, it's early days, but do you think it'll help, like, student mental health and focus? And, like, I know one of the big reasons for it was they said that constant phone use in school was tied to lower reading and math scores for
Yeah.
kids in our state. Do you think all of that's gonna happen?
I mean, I can't predict the future, but I
Yeah,
think that it's worth trying because
for sure.
what we were doing before isn't working, and if you look at just the overall climate of this country, I think I think the issue is that, like, yeah, sure, we can start with young people and then, like, but the issue too is that everyone's on their phones too much, and
Right.
I'm me too, right? And I think that I find that, like, the best moments with my students where I feel like they really start thinking and learning is when they're just having conversations back and forth without the phone there, without having to without even Googling stuff and looking stuff up, and
Right.
we've had a couple moments where, especially with Charlie Kirk's situation, they didn't really know what was going on, and then it's less of a disruption in a way, right? But
Yeah.
then they did all open their phones at 2:40 and all saw that incident, so
Interesting. I kind of hope honestly for them that it gives them, like, a lifetime skill of, like, not being addicted to their phone and being able to, like, put it away for a couple hours because, like, I don't have that.
I know, I'm
So,
using I
we'll see.
what annoys me now is that I need my phone. They have like two-factor authentication to get into
Okay.
any of this to get onto your board, to do your attendance. So I'm actually annoyed now when I have to take my phone out of my bag. Whereas before, I'm enjoying not having to have my phone. Like I'm
Nice.
enjoying that as an excuse. So I'm sure students, a lot of them are annoyed with it, but they're not complaining like I thought they would. I really thought they would be tweaking out and freaking out, and they're just kind of mellow about it.
I
Some
guess
of
maybe
them,
maybe knowing that, like, nobody has it is, like,
yeah,
helpful,
there's no
It's
FOMO.
like, you're not being left out. Yeah, exactly.
So what's happening is they have these pouches, right? This is I should have stolen a pouch to show you. And what they were doing on the first day is they were pretending they were like it was like almost like a cigarette addiction, where they were just doing that. So they were
That's
just
so
typing.
funny.
A kid was just typing on the Yonder pouch. I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just used to typing on my phone." Like, so it shows you they're addicted, as are we.
That's crazy. All right, well, hard pivot then to a less exciting topic. Obviously, with the news of Charlie Kirk, I think it's really an interesting time because for so long, I feel like people have been warning but being ignored about online extremism, kids sort of getting all of this hateful messaging just so easily and going down these really dark spirals. Seems like maybe that happened in this case. So we obviously need more information
Mhm.
still, but what are your kids saying? Are they all sort of on these types of platforms? Are they talking in the slang and, like, the meme culture that was really, like, prevalent here? And how did they respond this week? Was it something, like, that was just the topic of discussion the whole time basically after?
Yeah, so I honestly wasn't sure if they even knew who he was because he doesn't really come up in class, right? And I work in a progressive school in New York City. And when I was talking to kids about their biggest concerns, and I don't want to reveal too much personal info about
Sure,
my
of
students,
course.
but a lot of when we talked, just getting to know each other, I asked them what issues and stuff they're into, and I said it didn't have to be political. And most of the kids I said, "Had you been following the news this summer?" And most of the kids brought up ICE. So that was like their main concern and the main news item that they'd been following up until obviously this week. So I wasn't really sure if they were in that Charlie Kirk, Turning Points USA ecosystem, New York
Mhm.
City teenagers. And so the day after he got killed, I wasn't even sure I was going to bring it up, but I often do hold space for them if they have any questions when there's a school shooting, which is that was a school shooting,
Right.
right? I think we
Something like
forget
the
that.
46th or something of
Yeah.
the year. It's
Yeah.
crazy, but
Alongside the other one that happened that day. So I mean, unfortunately, I can't stop for every school shooting anymore because they're so prevalent, but I definitely know that some kids like to talk about it and some kids don't, but I just want to always give them the space for it. But being the nature of like the political nature of Charlie Kirk, I wasn't sure if I should bring it up or not. But then when I came into class, the first period that I have was They were like, "Miss, can we talk about it?" And I was like, "What?" I wasn't sure. It could have been anything. Sometimes
Right.
it's like a stabbing on a train, right? Because they're more tuned in with like local community news. And I said, "What?" And they said, "You know, Charlie Kirk." And I said, do you want to?" And I had that moment of like, do I go there the same way I did after October 7th? Like,
Right.
I'm always grappling with. I think it's really important that we provide space for young people in our schools because otherwise they turn to other places to talk about
Sure.
this stuff or not talk about it and then don't process it and then it turns into something bigger. So I just said to myself, okay, let's go there. I said let's and I put a time cap on it, but it ends up being in most of the period. So I said, okay, well, what do you all know? And so I started with like who wants to I said I always frame those conversations like, I don't know how everyone feels about this. I don't know people's personal violence with gun experience with gun violence. So let's just
Right.
all be very respectful. Let's just assume that everyone has different opinions about this. So let's speak about this in a very as non-volatile, toxic way as possible. And so I just went around the room and we just collected information like it was a historical incident, because I guess it will be. And they all were on the same page with it. I'll just kind of leave it there. They all knew who he was. They all raised their maybe one kid in a couple classes never heard of him. I'm like, I don't know who that is. But the majority of them
What
heard
a
about
blessing.
him.
No, sorry.
They were like, never heard of this guy. And then they all had varying degrees of the same takeaway.
Which was like,
I'm terrified to even talk about it right now because of what's going on with I want to also side note, there's tons of teachers losing their jobs or being removed
right.
from their schools. But okay, I'll tell you that they all said okay, the most benign way of saying they all weren't surprised. They all weren't surprised. Most of them thought it was tragic.
Right.
Obviously killing they were and I think the most traumatic thing for them was pretty much all of them opened their phones, whether it was TikTok or Instagram, and that was the first video they saw. So they all, against their
Wow.
will,
The actual
were
video
they
of
all
the,
saw it. I did
that's
too.
crazy.
It was the first thing I saw when I opened up Instagram. We were talking more about that than anything because most of them had not seen someone get killed like that before.
Right. That's crazy.
So, and that was I was helping them process that the most. So, that was hard for me because I said, no one's ever really supposed to see that. And then I saw it multiple times. They saw it multiple times. It's since been taken down. That has to do with the fact that Meta isn't doing anything what do they say? They're not doing any fact checking on their side. They're obviously not also flagging violent videos like that.
Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, I know so many people, myself included, were flagged on TikTok for even just talking about it, like factually, which was crazy.
Right.
So the
Yeah, it
two
didn't make sense.
extremes of
Yeah,
moderation, it
like,
seems
maybe
like.
we should
But
go where somewhere in the middle, but they all saw it, and then most of them basically because of the population I teach, not one of them was a admitted fan of him.
okay,
One kid said, "Oh, I've seen that guy on TikTok. I agree with some of the stuff he says," and we were all like, "Okay." The kids were like, "Oh."
just like Kristen Chenoweth, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But then a kid, and this happened to be a black student, and then one of the other kids was like, "You agree with what he said about MLK?" He's like, "What do you say about MLK?" And then when they told him, he's like, "Oh, no, no, no." So that's the other issue, right? So a lot of young people are only seeing clips of these people,
Right.
so they're
Right. I know that's honestly one of my takeaways from all these celebrities who kind of use this moment, I feel like, to soft launch being MAGA and
yeah,
bury it under sympathy for the situation is it's exactly who you would think it was because it's the people that haven't thought one step further about any issue than a snarky 15-second like quip that's super superficial and really doesn't like connect to any ideological consistency or anything like that. So it's been pretty shocking to see. And I know one thing I've been talking to my friends about is
yeah,
as tragic as this was and as traumatic as it is for students and everybody to be seeing the violence itself, and I think for the country a really sad occurrence for sure, it's also pretty traumatizing for basically every minority group that he spent his career and lifetime directing so much hatred towards, to see how many people and mainstream voices and mainstream celebrities think like he had some really great ideas, and also that he was like, what did Ezra Klein say? That he practiced politics the
oh,
right way. I feel like it's such a
yeah,
silly argument to make because your premise has to be then that you can sort of incite as much hate and violence towards other groups as possible. And as long as you're sort of like hands clean when the actual violence inevitably happens in this world, then you're doing something positive and productive. And that can't be the case. Like, I
No.
think what people mean to do is the ability to go into spaces where people don't agree with you and have conversations. And that's a wholly different thing than celebrating Paul Pelosi getting assaulted with a hammer and saying people should bail him out, right? Like those are
Yeah.
very different things. And I don't think that the latter thing is a good thing. And I know MSNBC fired, you know, Matthew Dowd for kind of
Mhm.
saying what was probably inarticulate and sort of maybe not the right moment, although at the same time, to what we were saying before, there are so many incidents like this happening every week in this country that it's often not the right time or it feels like not the right time, but we have to be able to say true things sometimes to move forward and have the conversation anyways, right? I mean, there is a
Yeah.
logical connection between this rhetoric and what happens in the world. We've been saying that since Trump came on the stage, since Trump was campaigning in 2016. Remember, he was saying he was going to bail out and pay for anyone that punched a journalist or
Yeah.
something at his rallies, all that sort of talk. So it's no surprise then that in the real world that has consequences. And I think that's something that seems to be like, ironically, we're not allowed to say in
R
the celebration of a free speech warrior. Like, we're not
right.
allowed to say anything true about it.
I
It's
disagree that
crazy.
I don't think he was a free speech warrior,
Right.
actually.
Totally.
And in
Absolutely.
air quotes, and I will say that the spaces that they're attacking right now are public schools. And those are the actual spaces that have the potential to execute what they're falsely claiming that Charlie Kirk was executing, right? There's this false narrative that Charlie Kirk was some sort of hero and
Right.
champion of free speech because went to college campuses to engage in debate over
Which, by the
important
way,
issues.
let's just be clear. So I worked for a group that was sort of supposed to be a progressive counter
Yeah.
to Turning Point. And one of the things I was talking about all the time last year, which seemed like accurate, was that we were losing with 12th grade boys. So we were
Yes.
looking into this and we're like, how do we mimic what they've done here? First of all, it's very hard to do because it's such a well funded right wing operation. But also,
Mhm.
it's through these Turning Point local student groups at the college that are inviting him. It's sort of
Yes.
a funding scheme for enriching all these folks. It's not
Yes.
like the school thinks this is going to be the most compelling, most interesting, productive debate
No.
possible to bring a polemicist to say a bunch of talking points.
No.
So I think that's pretty interesting. And I also think that for all the people posting about, well, we need to have these conversations, free speech, I haven't seen a lot of those celebrities and people, like even journalists, talking about this stuff, defend universities under attack, defend,
Exactly.
somebody like
Public
Mehdi
schools.
Hassan, who Charlie Kirk disagreed with and says you should be deported
Right.
because he disagrees with him. That's not free speech, and that's not
No.
doing politics the right way. Like
No.
it really is sort of a moment to see people that praise this sort of very like institutional civility that papers over racism and anything uncomfortable out of this like hundreds years old narrative of what America is and does versus the reality that people are living every single day. So it's definitely concerning to see
Well,
that.
it's because they don't really the people who are praising him and and championing him, it's because they don't want the changes. The reason they're stifling there's 30 plus schools who have divisive concept laws where I wouldn't even be able to talk about Charlie Kirk because it would have potentially led to me breaking one of those divisive concept laws because of the topics related to him. They are stifling free speech in school. They're devising. They are basically erasing any chance at having some sort of free speech, public discourse whatsoever. So they they are simply gaslighting the American people when they say the reason they like Charlie Kirk was because he was opening up debate and conversation with young people. That's not what he was doing. And anyone who actually watches more than 30 seconds of what he did on those campuses and his Jubilee debates or his debates with Mehdi Hassan, it's the exact opposite. So that's what's
Totally.
really enraging. And it's like we're watching the revisionist history in real time, and it's really scary, and that's why I think we need to save all his quotes so we can remind people in the future if they somehow take over the textbooks and take over the narrative, we can remind
Totally.
people that that's not who Charlie Kirk was.
Well, and I think also, like, look, like, I have respect for people that say, take a beat when a tragedy like this happens. You don't need to
Of course.
immediately go bash whoever the person is. And I understand people disagree with that too. And I think for some valid reasons. But, Jessica Tarlov and I were getting into a little Twitter fight because
Saw
she
that.
called him a genuinely good and nice human, and then got mad when I was like, do we need to really say all that? Like, we can agree it's terribly wrong. It's a tragedy. And she flipped out. And it's kind of like, well,
Mhm.
I guess if the racism doesn't apply to you, then it doesn't count, because how can
Right,
you really see all the things he said? If you believe what you think and you say every day on Fox News, Jessica Tarlov, you don't think that. It's really then just
right.
you're a media figure who benefits from this ecosystem and you really view it that way. And that's disappointing to see so many people take that tack, I think.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of pain in my students' eyes when other kids were recounting some of the things that he said. And it's does their pain not matter? I
Right.
understand that there's a community of people who love Charlie Kirk, right? I see them on my Facebook feed, people I went to high school with, and I'm supposed to have respect. We should have
Sure.
respect for that. Sure, they it's a loss. It's a public figure that they didn't know, but they liked for whatever reasons. But does the pain of my black and brown students and my female students who all recounted that he said that if a 10-year-old was they should bring that child to fruition, should that student does that student's opinions and pain not matter? Do my black students who are who one student didn't know that what he said about DEI and MLK and segregation, does their pain not
Completely.
matter? Right?
Well, and also, like, if you stop lying and saying all these glowingly positive, untrue things about him, then actually maybe the rest of us could give you that beat and say, all right, like, let's give a couple days, whatever. But
Yeah.
you kind of have to correct those lies as they come out, especially when they're from such mainstream voices like an Ezra Klein, like a Jessica
Yeah.
Tarlov.
Yeah.
Like, those people have big platforms and they're not, the far right people that we expect to say that stuff. So when they do it, it's extra damaging, I think.
Oh, I agree. And it makes you question a lot about them, unfortunately. It was really disappointing that day. I posted a TikTok that was a joke, but it was real about, finding all the people that I didn't unfollow after election day, like, cleaning it up a little bit because these are the people who just don't post about politics. They're just not into it. And suddenly I'm seeing that they might be into politics, but just subtly just not mentioning it until they were so moved by Charlie Kirk's death. And again, I think it's sad. It's awful. No one should get killed. No one should be killed. Everyone should see their life until their natural end. But I don't think that getting killed should then make it be that we just rewrite your entire story when it's in plain sight what you said.
Yeah, no, scary stuff. And I guess, like, my last question for you is, are your students on those sort of discords and Reddit channels, and how does it come into the classroom? And, like, do you notice the kids that seem like they're more involved in that stuff in any way behave differently, or is it everyone? And do you think school, or like, what's the intervention there that's going to be helpful? Obviously, maybe not having kids on their phones all day,
Not
but
having kids on their phones all day, getting them used to in maybe by not being on their phones all day, reminding them, or maybe not even reminding them, teaching them that in real life interactions are actually better than the ones behind a screen. And with those headsets on, like I've never played a video game except for like when I was younger. I do know that a lot of the young men stereotypically do stay up late playing video games, and they're familiar with all these Twitch
yeah, I was
celebrities.
gonna say a lot of the old men too. It seems like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I see a lot of people my age
apparently,
doing it. I'm like, oh my god,
apparently,
like,
like, what's happening?
it's
Like,
like,
I
do I
don't
need to
know.
learn Twitch? Like, I don't want
Oh, I know, it
to.
just gives me a headache, but I asked them if they heard of that video game, and they hadn't, so
Okay.
that made me feel good. I was like, "Cool." But I do know that, again, the guns are the reason the access to guns are why we have gun violence, like, we'll leave it there, but I do think that if you from age 5 until 85 maybe, you spend your evenings playing video games where you're just killing people
Mhm.
in the video game, I do believe it makes people numb to violence. And I saw an image, and I don't know if it's true or not because there's so much crazy stuff going on right now on the internet with speculation about this young man who allegedly killed Charlie Kirk. But there's a picture that his mom posted of him, this alleged picture of him, where it's the mom wrote something like how he's like totally checked out from the family now that he got all the gear for his computer to play video
Yeah.
games, and it's him sitting there with like a headset on with all the I don't know, all the flair, like all the stuff you need to play the games. And that coupled with all the pictures of him with guns that she very
Mhm.
quickly tried to take off the internet, it's a disastrous, dangerous recipe, right? I do think it's I don't really fully understand what a groper is still, but I just know that it's MAGA on MAGA violence. It's like Nick versus Charlie, and
Right, it's
like they
those
have
Nick
these
Fuentes fans who think he's
yeah,
not far right enough. Yeah.
like, wow, okay. But also not surprising, right? Like at the end of the day, who's the ones touting the guns and having all the access to guns? And
Yep.
anger. There's so much anger.
So much anger. Anyways, well, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining, and tell folks where they can find you.
Yeah, so obviously you can find me here on Substack, and I'm Sari Beth Rose everywhere except for I'm Sari on Blue Sky. I'm still on Blue Sky too. So you can find me all those places.